If you live in or have ever visited Lake Havasu or Mexicali or Phoenix, this book is for you. If you've not been to those places, hang on, because this is a wild, fun ride. The name of the book is The Three Little Javelinas. Susan Lowell is a person who's been in Arizona all her life. Her family moved there around 1900 in what was then the Arizona Territory. She still lives there with her husband and two daughters. She wrote this book. The illustrator, who's done most of his work in nearby Colorado, is Jim Harris, and he helps bring Susan's book alive. The Three Little Javelinas. Once upon a time, way out in the desert, there were three little javelinas. Now, javelinas are wild, hairy, southwestern cousins of pigs. Their heads were hairy, their backs were hairy, and their bony legs, all the way down to their little hard hooves, were very hairy. But their snouts were soft and pink. One day, the three little javelinas trotted away to seek their fortunes. In this hot, dry land, the sky was almost always blue. Steep purple mountains looked down on the desert where the cactus forests grew. Soon the little javelinas came to a spot where the path divided, and each one went a different way. The first little javelina wandered lazily along. He didn't see a dust storm whirling across the desert until it caught him. The whirlwind blew away and left the first little javelina sitting in a heap of tumbleweeds. Brushing himself off, he said, "Oh, I'll build a house with them." And in no time at all, he did. Then along came a coyote. You might call him a coyote. This animal ran through the desert so quickly and so quietly that he was almost invisible. In fact, this was only one of Coyote's many magical tricks. He laughed when he saw the tumbleweed house, and he smelled the javelina inside. A tender, juicy piggy, he thought. Coyote was tired of eating just mice and rabbits. He called out sweetly, "Little pig, little pig, let me come in." "Not by the hair of my chinny chin chin," shouted the first javelina, who had a lot of hair on his chinny chin chin. "Then I'll huff, and I'll puff, and I'll blow your house in," said Coyote. And he huffed, and he puffed, and he blew the little tumbleweed house away. But in all the hullabaloo, the first little javelina escaped and went looking for his brother and sister. Coyote, who was very sneaky, tiptoed along behind. The second little javelina walked for miles among giant cactus plants called saguaros. They held their ripe red fruit high in the sky, but they made almost no shade, and the little javelina grew hot. Then he came upon a Native American woman who was gathering sticks from inside a dried-up cactus. She planned to use these long sticks, called saguaro ribs, to knock down the sweet cactus fruit. The second little javelina said, "Please, may I have some sticks to build a house?" "Hau," she said, which means yes in the language of one of the desert people. When he was finished building his house, he lay down in the shade. Then his brother arrived, panting from the heat, and the second little javelina moved over and made a place for him. Pretty soon, Coyote found the saguaro rib house. He used his magic to make his voice sound just like another javelina's. Little pig, let me come in," he called. But the little javelinas were suspicious. The second one cried, "No, not by the hair of my chinny chin chin." "Bah!" thought Coyote. "I am not going to eat your hair." Then Coyote smiled, showing all his sharp teeth. "I'll huff, and I'll puff, and I'll blow your house in." So he huffed, and he puffed, and all the saguaro ribs came tumbling down. But the two little javelinas escaped into the desert. Still not discouraged, Coyote followed. Sometimes his magic did fail, but then he usually came up with another trick. The third little javelina trotted through beautiful palo verde trees with green trunks and yellow flowers. She saw a snake sliding by, smooth as oil. A hawk floated round and round above her. Then she came to a place where a man was making adobe bricks from mud and straw. The bricks lay on the ground, baking in the hot sun. The third little javelina thought for a moment and said, "May I please have a few adobes to build a house?" "Sí," answered the man, which means yes in Spanish, which was the brickmaker's language. So the third javelina built herself a solid little adobe house, cool in summer and warm in winter. When her brothers found her, she welcomed them in and locked the door behind them. Coyote followed their trail. The tip of Coyote's raggedy tail whisked right past their noses. He was climbing upon the tin roof. Next, Coyote used his magic to make himself very skinny. "The stovepipe!" gasped the third little javelina. Quickly, she lighted a fire inside her wood stove. "What a feast it will be," Coyote said to himself. He squeezed into the stovepipe. "I think I'll eat them with red-hot chili sauce." Whoosh! Sizzle! Then the three little javelinas heard an amazing noise. It was not a bark. It was not a cackle. It was not a howl. It was not a scream. It was all of those sounds together. Away ran a puff of smoke, shaped like a coyote. The three little javelinas lived happily ever after in the adobe house. And if you ever hear Coyote's voice, way out in the desert at night, well, you know what he's remembering. If you were paying attention, you knew that this story was very much like The Three Little Pigs. It is a southwestern adaptation of a familiar folktale, a chili-flavored Three Little Pigs. The story takes place in the Sonoran Desert, where Native American, Mexican, and Anglo cultures blend together. Javelina comes from a Spanish name for the collared peccary, a New World relative of swine, but not really a true pig, that ranges from the southwestern United States all the way down to the tip of South America. Javelinas are extremely bristly. They're very hairy on the chinny chin chin. Oddly enough, they're also related to the hippopotamus. In the American Southwest, in places like the Sonoran Desert, another common local name for peccaries besides javelinas is simply wild pigs. And that is the end of Susan Lowell's story, illustrated by Jim Harris, The Three Little Javelinas.